Today we have with us a person actually who needs no introduction. But just to make myself feel special and to show you off that I'm interviewing such an important person, this is a person who is there in multiple fields. So she is a professor of pathology, she is a professor of immunology, she is a professor of medicine, professor of pediatrics. Her research has been landmarks. She's been there in most of the guidelines we read during our nephrology practice and during our studentship. And yes, of course, her awards I can't enumerate here in this limited time. And most importantly, now she is the president of International Society of Nephrology. Yes, we are here with Dr. Agnes Professor Fogo. So we welcome you heartily, madam. Thank you for sparing your time and giving us this SOMI team, social media team of ISN, this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jaresh. That was a very, very kind and very flattering introduction, quite over the top, and I appreciate your time and ISN social media staff in allowing us to meet virtually in this format.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. So actually, last year itself, there has been an interview with Dr. Agnes Fogo. Yes, she is a personality who has had multiple interviews. And in that interview, maybe like all of you can go back and see that how she came into this profession and who are her mentors and what took her interest into this field. So I will refrain myself from going back to the same things. And I have some interesting things to know from Dr. Agnes. So, ma'am, first of all, so as I told you, you have multiple roles to do. So, how do you manage to fit in all those roles in this limited 24 hours?
I have wonderful family. I have a wonderful team, both at ISN, at my university and my department, and amongst all the people I work with on different committees. And I think that everybody is dedicated with common goals. We make things happen. We feed off each other. Some days I feel like I'm playing leapfrog, jumping ahead, and we can get a little bit behind, and then we take bigger leaps. So it really requires teamwork and enthusiasm for what you're doing to get things done, I think. And I'm kind of admiring the Olympic athletes who are working so hard now, who have overcome challenges of Corona, who've been training so much. And they are working really, really hard. And you can see the whole team, their families, all the technical people, all of the coaches that come together, and then how maybe the spotlight is on one person. Today you're interviewing me, but I represent all of ISN staff, and all the people who aren't even members of ISN who care about kidney health. I want to represent all of you, and it takes a team to make good things happen.
Great words, ma'am. Thank you. So they all say that God lies in the details, and you are the person who's been into the depths of the renal biopsy. So those are the details we want and make a difference in the patient's treatment. Now, there is always this confusion. So pathology or a biopsy always is read by a pathologist, but it is very much a part of the nephrologist curriculum also. So what is your opinion? Who should actually be reading a biopsy? What makes it better? Like being read by a pathologist or being read by a nephrologist?
Well, I think that a nephrologist should always be able to look at a biopsy and understand the language that pathologists use so they can integrate that in the care of the patient. But nephrologists don't have the training to pay attention to all the details that we pathologists put together to reach a description of the lesions and then integrate that. Likewise, pathologists need to have enough clinical understanding to be able to provide clinically meaningful language and interpretations of a lesion. A lesion may have many different pathways or ways that it came about. So just like the nephrologist probably would think it would be very silly for me to go to the clinic and make an integrated assessment of their patient, they are best trained to do that. I need to understand enough of that to integrate it with the biopsy so it can make sense. So we need to work together, but nephrologists, unless they've had additional specialty training in pathology, should not be reading renal biopsies. And renal pathologists, unless they also have had training in internal medicine and nephrology, should not go to the clinic and treat the nephrology patients. But we need to work together.
Very well taken. So yes, again, it's a teamwork. So even if for the second question, it's mainly the teamwork, and maybe CPCs, a lot of CPCs will go a long way in bringing about that.
In our practice, and most renal pathologists do this, after every biopsy, as soon as I have some preliminary information, I get on the phone and I call the nephrologist. I say, Dr. Smith, is this a good time? I have some preliminary information on the biopsy on your patient, Jane Doe. These are the findings that I have. This correlates well with such and such finding, or I have something unexpected. Have you considered this possibility, or could this be going on? And these are some things the biopsy suggests. Let's determine the answers to these questions and come up with an integrated understanding. Just yesterday, I had a biopsy in a transplant patient who was presumed to have diabetes as their preliminary disease, but has very strong C3 deposition in the glomeruli. And after additional studies, additional technical things that I did with the biopsy, I've determined there are some very early dense deposits by EM. So she has what morphologically looks like an early evolving dense deposit disease. So maybe this is recurrence of a primary process undiagnosed, or maybe she has a monoclonal protein that has triggered C3 dysregulation. So the nephrologist and I work together on figuring out what additional clinical pathological tests and assessments and judgments could explain what's going on in this patient, which was totally unexpected.
So with this, after the question of like who should be reading the biopsies, whether it's a pathologist or a nephrologist, now we have this another problem, that is this artificial intelligence coming in. So where do you see this artificial intelligence in the near or the far future?
It's a wonderful tool in many, many areas. Artificial intelligence, when properly trained, can cut down the time and improve accuracy on subtle things that humans may have taken a long time to find, or may even find in an unbiased way unusual lesional things at the subvisual level that may give hints to pathogenesis or classification or treatment pathways. Unlike the tumor field, where we are looking for one particular set of tumor cells that you can have a ground truth by another tumor marker to detect things that might not show up on the regular hematoxylin eosin stain slides. In renal pathology, we're integrating so many different things. So we have more complexity. I've been very pleased to work with some colleagues here at Vanderbilt, Dr. Haichun Yang and Dr. Yuan Kai Hao, and written some review process on this. We are working on this, but the limits of AI for renal pathology are that we still need to integrate with immunofluorescence and electron microscopy. The promise is very great for many areas to be able to have more time efficient pinpointing of lesions to enable us to more accurately find key lesions on a slide and focus on those lesions. And my dream, which would take many, many thousands of cases, is to be able to have AI analysis of the whole slide images and have a large cohort of, let's say lupus nephritis or IgA nephropathy, and determine if there are AI detectable features that could cull out and identify patients with poor outcome or with good outcome. And if we then could deconvolute and determine what are those lesions and can we understand them better, the subvisual level of pointing to things that may have escaped our eyes. And we certainly know that there are subtleties of renal biopsy findings that we didn't pay attention to before that we now do pay attention to. The most obvious example may be being microcirculation inflammation and antibody-mediated rejection that we didn't think about or look at when we didn't have that concept in place of antibodies causing inflammation in particular categories within the kidney. So I have great hope, but also I don't think that they will replace us humans. We need to work together as a team, not just with nephrologists, but with the computers and the artificial intelligence too, in my opinion.
Thanks, Dr. Agnes. That was very nice. And again, so what I can make out, it's very promising, but it can't replace humans. And again, one more time, you're like emphasizing on the management of it as a team.
We don't want to get into HAL and Space Odyssey 2001, A Space Odyssey, where the computer is directing our brains and our work there. We want computers and AI and whole slide imaging to help us do a better job.
Dr. Agnes, another question for you. So I am a nephrologist. So and dealing and learning pathology, as you yourself told. So pathologists are already trained for that. But for a nephrologist, it's very difficult to pick up all these fine things in pathology. How can it be made easier for them?
Well, I think if you have a renal pathologist at your institution, it's wonderful for the renal pathologist and the nephrologist to go over the slides together. The renal pathologist learns more about the clinical setting. The nephrologist can see more what these words mean in terms of seeing the biopsy. But maybe that's not convenient or available, or your pathologist is not on your site. So many years ago, the National Kidney Foundation invited me, under the leadership of Ned Kurtzman, who was the editor at AJKD, to do an online atlas for teaching about pathology lesions. And several years ago, I was allowed to update that online atlas. It's at ajkd.org. I have no conflict of interest. I don't have any money or anything. I did it for the love of teaching, under collections. And this atlas has many diseases described with short text, and we have just written a new core curriculum paper that is available online. I have tweeted the link to it at AJKD, that goes over all of the key lesions you may see in a renal biopsy, with linkage to the atlas to explain them. So if you're trying to understand, what does this mean? Double contour of the GBM, what does it mean? What could it cause? How can I understand this peculiar language that renal pathologists use? This is intended to be a good starting resource, and it's free, it's educational, it's to spread learning and understanding of kidney biopsy. And I'm very grateful to NKF and AJKD to allow this to be a free resource without any restriction on access. And of course, to my co-authors, Drs. Mark Lesko, Behzad Najafian, and Charlie Alpers. As a team together, I think we have done something that I'm very, very proud of.
Thank you. So all young nephrologists, please do take a note of this. There is a free for access, and it is something which is going to make your learning easier and ultimately the patient treatment a better. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Basically, the focus is all on the World Congress of Nephrology. So can you please give us a brief into your upcoming talk in the WCN?
Wow. That's an impossible task, to be brief about the upcoming World Congress of Nephrology, because it has so many exciting elements. We have pre-courses that you can subscribe to that are pre-recorded but have some live elements that we will look forward very much to interacting to you. We have fabulous plenary talks, groundbreaking science, and I'm most pleased we also have a patient, a celebrity patient, an athlete, superstar, world champion, Mr. Alonzo Mourning. We have talks, conferences, poster presentations. We will hopefully still be able to have a very small in-person element, maybe just those within Malaysia, but the virtual component will be exciting, and we'll have many opportunities to interact. And I think that the ISN staff has put together a program that is going to be very maneuverable, manageable, and enjoyable. We look forward to a terrific way of coming together virtually and taking advantage of the virtual environment and not having it be an obstacle to us learning.
Right, thank you. So you have already highlighted what are all the major things which we need to look forward to. Thank you very much. And before we wind up, one of the most important things from your end, with all your intelligence and your expertise. So some tips for the young nephrologists, so to achieve something more or do more in our field.
Oh, it's very hard for me to suggest that nephrologists should do more, because from my daily interactions with nephrologists, I think all nephrologists and renal pathologists and other scientists and affiliated workers in nephrology are all already doing more than they ever could have imagined, particularly with the stresses on our vulnerable populations with COVID. We are all stretched to the limit, and we are all working so hard to protect and prioritize care for those patients. So maybe the only thing I could suggest is that we all take a moment to be grateful for all the positive things that are still happening, that are still possible during COVID. Enjoy each other, even if it's virtual. Appreciate each other. and try to take deep breaths. And most importantly, take care of yourselves, take care of your family. I think we are all so very much overcome with all the work responsibilities, and you have to continue to find joy and promise. Just think of the amazing discoveries that have been made in nephrology over the last few years. Do you remember the thundering applause in Melbourne when we heard the fantastic results of the SGLT2 inhibitors? We've had much more good news with new therapeutics for chronic kidney disease. We have new advances we will hear about in the meeting. We should enjoy and focus on the positive, and most take care of yourselves, take care of ourselves. We are already working so hard, and we need to continue to find joy in what we do.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all this. So apart from the introduction and the presidential address, Dr. Agnes will actually be speaking on one of our favorite topics, that will be the update on FSGS. She's very much deeply into the sclerosis pathophysiology and the progression of CKD. So I think that is one session which we should be looking forward to, which is on 24th of Feb at 5:30 p.m. Malaysian time. So don't miss it. So thank you, Dr. Agnes, for being here with us and sparing your time. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. It was a pleasure to talk with you again. Bye.